Alrighty, I reckon we should get started. Welcome to our webinar today on 5 customer experience trends impacting managed service providers in 2014. My name's Ross. I work for Client Heartbeat, and I have Gordon Tan, CEO and founder of Client Heartbeat and Managing Director of RNG Technologies, with us today to present. I'll hand it over to Gordon, and what we will do is wait till the end to do a lot of the questions and answers. So please, feel free to shoot the questions through to us via the chat pane. But what I'll do is I'll facilitate the Q&A at the end and bring in Gordon. All right, over to you, Gordon.
Thanks, Ross. No worries. Hi, everyone. My name's Gordon Tan, as Ross mentioned. Thanks very much for coming and attending our webinar today. To give you a little bit of background about us, we are a customer satisfaction monitoring tool that's based here in Australia, and I appreciate you guys. A lot of you are from the US. I appreciate you guys for giving up your time today. I hear there's a pretty important World Cup game with the US, so look, we'll try to keep this as short as possible. Today we're going to talk a little bit about as mentioned, customer experience trends that are impacting managed service providers. And we've been able to gather quite a few interesting insights because we're working with so many MSPs, and which we'll go through, and what those results are and how they are going to impact on managed service providers moving forward. So to start off with, just to cover off on the agenda today, we're going to talk about what customer experience is and why it's important. Then we're going to go through and talk a little bit about some of the trends that we've identified after speaking to and surveying MSPs that are known as best-in-class MSPs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some actionable strategies that we've actually gotten specifically from some of the top MSPs, the 5 top MSPs in the world in terms of customer satisfaction and what they're doing or thinking and doing differently for their clients. So let's start by talking a little bit about customer experience. So the formal definition for customer experience as defined by Gartner is the practice of designing and reacting to customer interactions to meet or exceed customer expectations and thus increase customer satisfaction, loyalty, and advocacy. Putting it in simple terms, it's basically the overall experience that you're delivering to customers when you interact with them. And something we encourage is the customer experience doesn't just, it's not just a single event. It's the multiple touch points that you have within your business, right from accounts through to technical support, through to account managers, and that experience that's crafted around the user or the staff member. It's not just about fixing IT problems for managed service providers. It's about that holistic experience that the customer is going to get. But there's a number of different reasons why customer experience is important. Predominantly, it's because it improves customer satisfaction. It's the primary driver for why customers, how you're going to increase your customer satisfaction. With customer satisfaction, obviously, it's pretty intuitive, but there are a number of benefits associated with that. The repeat business, it increases customer advocacy. If you've got more advocates in the market, they're giving you more referral business. It helps you reduce customer churn. That's really, really important because from a managed service provider's perspective, we often operate on a recurring revenue model, and every customer that you lose can actually cost you, tens of thousands of dollars off your bottom line. You only need to lose one customer, one $1,500 a month customer every year, and that'll have a significant impact on your overall bottom line and your profits. This is a really important one, in terms of customer experience. It creates a competitive advantage. I'm sure a lot of IT companies, and if you're running IT companies out there at the moment, you're scared of the changes or you're wary of the changes that are happening in our industry at the moment. Not only do you have cloud computing and infrastructure as a service and different models which are kind of seeing our industry change, but one of the key questions that you should be asking yourself is, what is our competitive advantage in today's market? Not just now, but in 2 years, 3 years' time. Customer experience is going to be one of those competitive advantages. You've got organizations that are doing the same thing that you're doing right now in the Philippines. I was actually there 2 weeks ago. There's companies doing IT support managed services, selling directly into your local regions, already operating out of the Philippines and doing it for 30% of the price. What's the competitive advantage for you? pretty self-explanatory. It's that you can create a better experience for your customer. You can create a more personalized experience for your customer, and we'll talk more about that. Because customer experience improves customer advocacy, it increases your revenue and sales, and it allows you to build stronger relationships with your clients. Overall, all of these things point to customer experience and customer satisfaction being the number one, or close to, very close to the number one driver you should be focused on in your business at the moment. So that's why it's important. Now let's talk a little bit about the research that we've been able to do. We work with a number of MSPs and we do their customer satisfaction monitoring, and what that's allowed us to do is see who does it well and who doesn't do it not so well. So what we did was we analyzed the data of, at the time we had about 316 IT companies using Client Heartbeat. We analyzed the data of all of those companies and we broke them up. So we got the top 15%, we've called them best-in-class IT service providers, and we reached out to them and asked them to do a survey. Of those 47, the top 10, so that's the top 10 best customer satisfaction in the world, or in the Client Heartbeat world, as we would say. We reached out to them and asked if they would participate in more of an in-depth study or analysis process. Out of those top 10, 5 were interested. We're going to call them, for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to call them the top 5. So we were able to do a little bit more of a deep dive with them. We traveled out to see them where possible, and we obviously developed some interesting insights from them, which I'm going to share with you today as well. So this is the results that we got once we'd surveyed the best-in-class MSPs and looked at the trends that were across these best-in-class companies. The first was to offer personalized service. The second was to add a human element. The third was to use multiple customer feedback loops. The fourth was to harness the power of company culture. And the fifth was to understand the 4 pillars of customer satisfaction. So we're going to go through and talk about each of these individually. But these were the 5 trends that we identified. Not always consistent across all 47 companies, but across a majority of the companies, these things were fairly consistent. So we'll start with talking about personalized service. Personalized service itself is pretty self-explanatory. We'll go into this a little bit more detail when we start to talk about some of the top MSPs and the language that they use. But, treating customers like friends is something that's becoming more and more important. With the advent of cloud computing, I don't know if you guys have seen some of the information that's coming out, with Amazon and products like Mayday, where, they're now delivering instant support to their to people on a Kindle. So the people on the Kindle now can just click a button and automatically get access to an agent. And that has to scare some MSPs for one, or at least again make them a little bit wary about how that's going to encroach on their their customer base. The truth is that offering personalized service is one of the keys to that. So as MSPs, smart MSPs are now using technology to personalize communications. So there's a couple of ways you could do that. You've got data in your PSA these days that maybe you didn't have in the past. If you don't have a PSA, like a ConnectWise or an Autotask or something like that, you should really be looking at that. Most larger MSPs do have some sort of ticketing system. But you've got a wealth of data in your PSA right now that you could be harnessing, and we'll show you a bit later in this webinar one MSP, one of the top performing MSPs, something they're doing that's so easy that again is driving this personalized service a little bit. That data is power, and you should be looking at ways intelligently that you can create opportunities to improve your service through that data. The second thing is the advent of targeting personalized communication through newsletters and marketing automation. So as an example, back in the past, maybe we had a scenario where we sent a newsletter out to all of our customers every month. And that's quite fine. That's still a good personalized mechanism. But what the smart MSPs are now doing is targeting those newsletters a little bit better. If you've got a batch of, lawyers, if that's your target niche, if you've got a target niche of accounting firms, if you've got a target niche of not-for-profit organizations, you should be targeting your communication to those specific groups. The internet is becoming more and more targeted, more and more personalized, and people see more and more value in those personalized connections. In the past, we didn't have the technology to be able to do that effectively. Now, it's pretty easy. Marketing automation is another one. There's products out there like HubSpot, like Infusionsoft, that allow you to do very specific automated marketing based on behaviors that the users will take, based on demographic information. And that's all things that people are looking at. Again, it sounds counterintuitive. It's a technology platform that's delivering personalized service, but it ultimately is about improving that level of personalized service that you can give to your customer. You know, this, again, the final point that we're going to make here ties into a lot about your PSA, but it's about collecting customer. Guys, I think I just may have dropped out there. It's collecting customer data so you know the customer name, the past conversations, the past ticket information, the trends that you're having, you're seeing within this customer information, and also problems. What particular problems are occurring or have occurred in the past. But most importantly, I mean, most people have access to this data, but it's about having some ability to give your technicians context and to what they're doing in a real-time environment. Your staff need ability to access that data when they're dealing with customers, doing support at that time, because it empowers them and it allows them to create this more personalized experience with your customer. Now, there's products out there that can already do that. I was at the ConnectWise conference at the end of last year, IT Nation. Arnie Bellini is working towards that, building systems like that into ConnectWise. I'm sure Autotask will follow. There's already products out there in the market. Unfortunately, Phil from Desk Director was going to be on this conversation, but he had some personal issues to attend to. But products like Desk Director already do that. They allow you to have like a HUD, heads-up display, that pulls data from your PSA and shows you all of that information, gives you that context, so that when your support staff are doing tickets, they've got all that information readily available and front of mind. So that's personalized service. The second thing is about adding a human element. So again, it's really talking about the difference, I guess, in where the industry is moving and where we are today. In the olden days when you used to be in business, it all used to be about meeting people face to face and for want of a better word, having a handshake. The advent of cloud computing, the advent of technology has seen that change. But what it has meant is that these human interactions are now more effective than they were before. With everyone else transitioning to models whereby you're delivering things over the internet, the ability to, the value that you can create from a simple on-site visit has gone up. And therefore, these best-in-class MSPs are understanding that. They're now empowering their staff to be a little bit more face-to-face because it adds to their customer experience. At a minimum, we should stop trying to change our businesses so that we're, a bland technology, deliver everything through technology and remote support type interaction to something whereby we're encouraging that human interaction. That might be something simple. Everyone here in this webinar, if you're an MSP, has some sort of remote support tool, whether that's TeamViewer, whether that's something that you're using within your RMM. But there's often an ability to turn on a webcam. We have an MSP ourselves that is currently sitting at about 30 staff here in Brisbane. All of our service desk guys have a webcam sitting on top of their computer. And they're asked as part of their responsibilities to turn it on when they first start remote supporting a customer and just give them a bit of a wave. At the end of the day, it's adding that human element to what they're doing. And that's actually not something that we thought of ourselves. That's something that came from GFI. GFI were encouraging people to do it as well. And look, the top MSPs, they understand this. They understand this connection with, creating that human contact, curating that human relationship as their competitive advantage to improve their customer experience. It ultimately allows you to build trust and rapport, but there's another side benefit of that. If you're a faceless, if you really are becoming a faceless company, you'll find people tend to get angrier and more frustrated. That's why people aren't dealing with companies, hate dealing with companies that are outsourced, because they know every time they call, they're going to get someone else who doesn't really care about them, doesn't understand their problem, who is worlds away. And so anything that you could do to add that human element to your business is going to help you improve your customer experience overall. The third thing is this concept of multiple feedback loops. So in the past, when you were talking about customer satisfaction, there was really a couple of different options, but I'd say the vast majority of people understood that, look, we should be surveying customers at the end of a ticket. That was one feedback loop that people were pretty, a lot of people adopted. That ticket closing survey process people found quite quickly, and this is something that's happened across the board, not just in the best-in-class MSPs, but they found it was largely ineffective. The reason for that is because, number one, you only get a very small percentage of people filling it out. And number two, what you'll find if you do it is that consistently across the board, you'll get positive feedback. And then you'll just get a very small amount of negative feedback. Now we know from our statistics and our data that that's not because the vast majority of an MSP's customers are happy. Far from it. The reason for it is because, the theory behind it is because we feel that people are just, for a start, if you have a positive experience, you're more likely to want to say thank you. But if you have a negative experience, particularly if a staff member at some client that you're supporting is having a negative experience, they simply don't want to give you any more time. If they've been offline for 3 hours while you're, cleaning a virus off their computer and you've had to revisit that issue 3 times, the truth is they just want to get back to work. And so what you find is you get the skewing of positive feedback. So people have started to understand that you need to have multiple different ways of collecting feedback within your organization. And we've kind of coined this phrase of multiple feedback loops. Now, quarterly business reviews is something that a lot more MSPs are adopting, and I would definitely encourage you, if you're in that, if you're delivering managed services, to be doing this. But that quarterly business review process is another way that you can go out and create another feedback loop for your organization. It's someone else different going out, talking to the key business decision makers and finding out how you're tracking. Coupled with that, there's the quarterly customer feedback survey. Now, this is obviously something that Client Heartbeat was built to do. It was built within our MSP 4 years ago. So it was built out of a need for some ability to survey customers. But what it does is it's very short, and it takes the temperature of your clients in another setting. With these multiple different types of feedback loops, you're able to get better data. And with that information, you can then schedule internal meetings to review that information. You can integrate it into your company meetings. The best MSPs, which we'll again talk about, integrate it into their company structures. So that's not just talking, but sending an email around when a client's angry, but it's actually a formalized process by which they deal with this feedback. There's a formalized process for how they deal with customers at risk. That might be something along the lines of, reach out to the customer, put him on a call list so that he's called every week for the next 6 weeks, just to check in with him, see how he's going, arrange a meeting with him to go out on site, bring in key stakeholders, brainstorm why the client is unhappy. But there's a structure. The point I'm trying to make is there is a structure around these multiple feedback loops. The integration into the company meetings is really important. We're going to talk a little bit about culture and why that's so important for best-in-class MSPs. And this integration into the overall company structures improves that message that you're trying to send your staff, that this stuff is important. This is an example survey. Now, you don't need to use Client Heartbeat to do this. Let's not, we're not going to take you down that track. You simply need to create a survey, whether that's free in SurveyMonkey or it's, a custom system that you built, and allow you to ask you some very specific questions that they're going to rate 1 to 5, and that's all you're going to need. The benefit that you have if you take this data is you can trend it over time. You can see, hey, John Smith, he's my best customer. How is he individually trending? Is he going up? Is he going down? And that's really important from an MSP's perspective, because we all know that if we lose one big customer, maybe that's $5,000 or $6,000 in monthly recurring revenue that's off our bottom line. Number 4 is the focus on company culture. So in the top 5, so the top 5 MSPs in the world, or at least in the Client Heartbeat world, when we surveyed them, when we spoke to them, they felt that the development of company culture was the biggest driver of their results. So the more we spoke to them, the more that we talked to them, the more that we analyzed their businesses, we found that there was no secret procedure that was allowing them to deliver this fantastic customer experience. There was no secret procedure that was allowing them to deliver this best-in-class or best in the world, actually, customer satisfaction. It was a way of thinking, and it was a way of building their company culture. But that's not enough for us, right? When I first looked at that, I went, well, what really is company culture? What are they really talking about when they're talking about this particular term? It doesn't really mean a whole lot. In my opinion, company culture. Everyone has a company culture, and look, I would have said in our MSP, look, our guys are happy, and look, we do take care of our guys, and yeah, they deliver great service. But sorry guys, my headset keeps dropping out there. But the real question is, what is that? How do you impact that? And I was really lucky to do an executive course at Stanford University in the US last year. And a guy by the name of Charles O'Reilly that we sat through a lecture on talked about this specifically. It was really, really good timing, actually. Talked about this specifically and gave me a definition of culture, which I wanted to share to you today, which as a business owner or a driver or a service delivery manager or someone in charge of an MSP is going to give you a little bit of clarity around what company culture actually means from the perspective of the MSP itself. This was the definition he gave us. He said culture is social control. It's sets of information that tells staff what to do in the absence of procedures. So I used to think culture was this fluffy thing that, you talked about more from a marketing perspective, to be honest. Prospect will bring you in and say, Gordon, why do you, what separates your business? And I would say, oh, look, Mr. Prospect, it's our company culture. We have a great company culture, all of that kind of thing. But I never looked at it in this way. I never looked at it in a way where it's now becoming something that you can use. It's sets of information. It's multiple information streams that are sent to your staff in various ways that tell your staff what to do in the absence of any kind of procedure. So let's put that in context. In an MSP, many other MSPs really struggle to proceduralize the business. Why is that? Well, because it's a business that's so dynamic and so fluid, and the problems that we tackle on a day-to-day basis are so different. It's almost impossible to proceduralize the whole thing. Sure, you can proceduralize bits, but often one of the biggest concerns that we have is that our staff don't have any common sense. Now, I know some of you there are thinking and nodding with me at the moment, even though I can't see you. It's true. It's one of the biggest problems that we have in MSPs these days is we shake our head and say, how did that even happen? Why did you reboot that server without calling and checking that it was going to be okay? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? It's not common sense. I would challenge you to think about it in another way. Maybe your staff didn't have the sets of information they needed that told them what the correct behavior was, that allowed them to choose what the correct behavior was in the absence of those procedures. Fortune magazine says it's impossible to monitor the actions of every employee no matter how many accounting and compliance controls you put in place. Our company's cultural code is supposed to equip frontline employees to make the right decisions. That's all culture is. So when we talk about development of company culture, what we're talking about is development of a social control system within your business. A social control system that's going to tell your staff what to do in the absence of procedures. The best-in-class companies, and particularly the top 5, understand this inherently. The truth is that we've all got a culture in our business. It's whether you choose to leave it unmanaged or managed. Every asset in your business can be managed or unmanaged. Now, you probably manage a lot of the assets that you understand. A lot of us come from technical backgrounds like myself. We know how to, manage server installs checklists, and we know how to, proceduralize, a service desk. Things that a little bit don't come as intuitively to us as managing people. Are we going to leave that managed or unmanaged? Sometimes we try to manage it, and sometimes we get it wrong. But culture is something that you need to be managing as well. The top 5, the best MSPs in the world, manage their culture. A vast proportion of the best-in-class companies, the top 46, manage their culture. We've talked about it, the fact it's common sense. You need to start looking at it from 2 perspectives. Do our staff not have common sense, or do they not have the sets of information they need to be able to choose the right decision? So how are we going to go and affect culture? There's a few different ways that you can actually go about doing that. The first thing you can do is actually define what you stand for as an organization, defining values. I don't know if any of you were at IT Nation at the end of the year, but they had Simon Sinek on. Ani brought Simon Sinek on. And he spoke about starting with why you do what you do. You know, you need to define those values that your staff understand why you do what you do. Then there's a whole bunch of whatever you want to call them, sets of information, specific tasks that you need to do to improve your culture. There's incentives. There need to be some sort of incentive for them to work towards, you know, whatever culture you're trying to create. There needs to be some symbolic changes. Maybe if one of your values is teamwork, maybe you go to a more open plan office. You know, there's got to be some sort of symbolic change. Again, it's a set of information that communicates something to the staff. Management need constant reinforcement, so you need to, as the director of the organization or as a top-level manager, you need to be the one that's speaking about it until you're blue in the face. You know, Jack Welch talks about, you know, when he was starting GE, one of the most successful companies in the world, when he was starting at GE, he used to talk about culture, he used to talk about his vision and values until he was sick of talking about it, and then he said he was halfway there. And finally, you need to celebrate, and this is something that we picked up the top 5 do really, really well, is celebrate the wins. Celebration is a really powerful way of enhancing, you know, that is to clearly articulate what behavior you want within your business. Celebrating as a team, celebrating with a small note to someone saying thank you, you know, for living your values. You know, something like that is really, really important. You need to start building this culture, and then what will happen is peer pressure will take over and will reinforce it. So one of the biggest drivers of you know, these cultural initiatives, aside from what you're going to be doing, is the fact that once other people start coming on board, everyone else will start coming on board, because no one likes to be left out in the cold. If all of your peers are doing something, you're going to be doing something. You know, we're trained to think that we're these walking, talking, you know, independently thinking organisms that have our own value systems and, you know, make our own decisions. But the research actually says something completely different. We're a victim of our environment. We're a victim of whatever environment we're dropped into and the sets of information that we're being given and what our peers are doing. And that largely dictates our choices and our actions. You know, they did a study and 98,000 people die each year from medical errors. That's not, a vast proportion of that is actually from infection. So that's not infection like I'm going to come into a hospital with an infection and then I'm going to die. It's actually I'm in the hospital and I catch an infection while I'm in the hospital and I die. And so they did a study, they decided to do a study and they go, okay, well, why are all these people dying of medical error? Well, let's have a look. Infection is really, really high on that list. It's actually the #1. So let's have a bit of a look and survey doctors. So in a study, they survey 73%, they survey all the doctors within a particular hospital, and they ask them if they're washing their hands. You know, something simple, washing their hands before they go to after they go to the toilet. 73% of doctors say that they wash their hands. So they decide to put a camera up in the toilet, and what they actually observed was that the observed rate was 8% were washing their hands. And interestingly, and probably most importantly, that 8% was washing their hands when there was someone else in the room with them, another doctor. It's about peer pressure. Moving on to the final trend. The final trend is the understanding of the 4 pillars of customer satisfaction. Now, best-in-class companies understand the key drivers of customer satisfaction. Look, that's largely, I must admit, because in Client Heartbeat, it's something that we advocate and we educate, you know, our MSPs on, and it's the default questions that come in with Client Heartbeat, so people are already understanding it. But the best-in-class MSPs understand it. So let's have a bit of a look at it here. The Gallup organization, they actually surveyed 1 million small businesses. This isn't actually MSP-specific, but it's across the board with service-based businesses. So Gallup surveyed 1 million small businesses, and what they found was that eerily, there were 4 key drivers that came up time and time again in terms of customer satisfaction. Those were accuracy, which is attention to detail, availability, which is response times, partnership, which is you know, a feeling of a feeling of working within the same organization, and advice, which is helping your clients learn. These 4 key drivers are the measures of customer satisfaction. You know, when you want to improve customer satisfaction, you focus on these 4 areas, but you focus on them in a specific order, and we'll talk about that now. So in the Gallup model, as you can see, accuracy and availability underpin the top two, which is partnership and advice. What this basically means is no matter how much advice you give your customers, no matter how much partnership you create with your customers, and how much of that feeling of being one company you create with your customers, if you don't get attention to detail and you don't get response times right, if they're not getting the stuff that they want when they want it, no amount of partnership or advice is going to make any shred of difference. So if you're starting out and trying to improve your customer experience, you need to start with how can we improve our attention to detail, how can we improve our response times. Partnership and advice is to create advocates. Once you've got those first two pillars down, you can move up the chain and start focusing on that stuff. And when you start focusing on that stuff, that's when you start being able to drive referral business. But what happens is, in these MSPs, a lot of organizations understand that. They understand that these two things underpin it, and they work on these two things, response times and attention to detail. So let's talk a little bit about actionable strategies from each of the top 5. Now these, bear in mind, are the top 5 MSPs in the world. I'm going to tell you who they are. They're in varying locations, some in Australia, some in the US, some big, some small. But there's some interesting insights, and I wanted to share just one with you from each of the top 5 that we thought was interesting after our analysis and our deep dive into their businesses. Abusi. So these guys are actually based out of the UK. They're a small MSP. They've got, I think they've got about 5 staff. He said that standardization is a big help at delivering great service. Abusi are very big on standards. Standards allow you to obviously give a consistent level of service. It also improves your attention to detail because, or your accuracy. If everything is exactly the same, all of your techs know how to, as an example, if you're using WatchGuard firewalls, all of your techs are familiar with WatchGuard firewalls. It makes things easier. It means that your clients get a more reliable result. Abusi have said, when we were talking, he said, look, he doesn't want to be the biggest MSP in the world. He wants, a boutique niche MSP that uses standardization, delivers great service. And that's what he's got. He has some of the best customer satisfaction scores in the world, not only for a business of his size, for a business of any size. Quorum, these guys are in Sydney. He said staff retention is key to great service. So if you actually go and you Google customer satisfaction and staff retention, you'll find that there's a positive link. The longer you can retain your staff, the better customer satisfaction you'll have. And that seems it is quite intuitive, like customers prefer to deal with the same people. They prefer familiarity. If your staff have more familiarity with your clients, it's building better relationships, it's improving the customer experience. It also means that they can fix problems faster. There's a number of different reasons. So Quorum, they haven't lost a staff member in 3 years. And he believes that's one of the keys that allow him to deliver the best service. They've got about 15 staff. Leading IT, this is something interesting. This is something different, so I thought we'd share it. Look, answering phones live and trying to resolve issues straight away. So they answer the phone straight away, and their model exists so that they can respond without having to log a ticket. So 40% of the time when a customer calls, they get the issue respond straight away on the spot. So that's pretty cool. That would allow them to alleviate a vast majority of the availability or response time issue. Look, it's something that you have to work through and figure out how you're going to work and how you're going to price. But ultimately, it's allowing them to deliver a fantastic customer experience. The results speak for themselves. They're in the top 5 MSPs in the world for customer satisfaction. ClearPath, these are the number 1. These guys are number 1 in the world for customer satisfaction. And there's so much stuff, we could talk about with ClearPath. I actually love these guys. But there's so much that we could talk about ClearPath. But the one thing that I thought was fantastic was their use of language. So these guys were the ones that coined this phrase that we used a little bit earlier. He said, well, the way that we treat customers is we treat clients as close friends. Now, that to me is really, really powerful. Why? It's because they didn't create this language. They didn't create this language to talk to us about. We just called them and spoke to them. They created this language internally for their team. What is this? Well, this is culture at its best. It's another set of information that they're giving their staff, which is telling their staff, the behavior that they want in the absence of any kind of procedure. So in the absence of knowing what to do because you don't have a procedure, just treat the client like a close friend. What would I do for a close friend? Well, I'll probably work after hours to make sure that they, get what they need. I'm not going to leave them hanging. I'm not going to overcharge them. I am, I'm going to be honest and upfront with them about, what we're doing. It has so many different ramifications, but I just felt like the language is really, really important. These guys were one of the guys that spoke quite a lot about culture, and they have a great culture within their business, and that's why they're number one. They deliver fantastic customer satisfaction to their clients. Apex. These guys are, I believe they're in North America, but I can't remember, maybe in Canada. Apex, we talked a little bit earlier about you leveraging your PSA to deliver a more personalized service, and I said I'd give you an example, and this is one that I thought was really, really interesting and just so easy, So what they do is they use their PSA to find contacts that haven't spoken to them in 2 months. So they have a report that runs, show me all contacts that we haven't spoken to in the last 2 months, and they just give them a call on a call cycle. Give them a call, hey, Bob, how you going? Just wanted to give you a call. Haven't heard from you in a while. Just wanted to check everything was going okay, that you haven't had any problems. What a fantastic way to deliver a personalized service. It takes them no time at all. If they're doing it every week, it literally takes them half an hour or less, or maybe a little bit more. But the truth is the amount of value they're creating, the amount of goodwill they're creating with their clients, well exceeds that. And the truth of it is that this is something that you could implement tomorrow. And it's something that everyone should be implementing. And it's just one way that you can leverage the data that you've already got to deliver a more personalized service to your clients. It was an excellent idea, and that's why I wanted to share it. At the end of the day, what the top 5 do is they challenge themselves to think and act differently. So they have a focus on great technology, and obviously they're proud of the solutions that they put forward. But, they have that focus around customer experience, customer satisfaction. And that's what allows them to get these great results. At Client Heartbeat, we have this real focus. We have this real investment to try to make our clients move into that best-in-class zone, the top 15% of all of the MSPs in terms of customer satisfaction. And the reason for that is because best-in-class actually has a number of different benefits. Our data shows already that if you're best-in-class, you have 70% better retention of clients. If you could just get to that point, if you could just get into that best-in-class bracket, you'll have 70% better retention than an average MSP. Everyone loses customers. Anyone that you talk to that tells you that they never lose customers is lying, or they're not using Client Heartbeat, one of the two. But the truth is, even the best MSPs lose customers. It's just part of the business. You lose them for various reasons, but some lose more than others. We talk about losing one $1,500 a month contract each year for 4 years. You lose $180,000 in revenue, just one $1,500 contract, losing one $1,500 contract every year for 4 years, sorry. The thing that I like best, the thing that excites me the most about why best-in-class matters is these best-in-class companies are selling for higher value. So, in the past, if you're going to sell your business, what's going to happen? Well, someone else is going to come along, going to look at your books. They're going to look at how much profit you're making. They're going to give you a multiple, maybe of 4, if you're lucky, 5. They're going to look at your recurring revenue, make some deductions, add some add-backs, and you're going to get some sort of valuation based on multiple. Well, best-in-class companies, we just witnessed a merger of 2 Client Heartbeat companies, and the company that was delivering best-in-class customer satisfaction got a premium for their share because they were delivering best-in-class customer satisfaction. If you can prove that you're delivering best-in-class customer satisfaction to someone who's going to buy you, they're not just going to buy you for your profit anymore. Maybe they're going to buy you for your capability. And that's when you can start making real money, creating real value in your business. It's different. It's not connected. It may double. It may add 50% or may double the value that your business has to another company. If a printing company wants to get into the MSP space, this is happening more and more these days. You're seeing it in the US a lot. In Australia, we're starting to see it now. But if Konica Minolta wants to buy an MSP, who are they going to look for? Well, they're going to look for the one that delivers the best service, and they're probably going to pay a premium for it. So you want to be in that space. Client Heartbeat, I'm just going to go through this very quickly. Client Heartbeat is something that allows you to do this, customer satisfaction process on autopilot. We talked about those multiple feedback loops. Also, importantly, it allows you to compare yourself to other MSPs and see if you're in that best-in-class space or see if you're above industry average across those key questions, and also look at those trends. I'm not really going to spend too much time on this, but look, if you're interested in actually a demo or looking at that, feel free to email me. More than happy to run through it. We've got many, many happy customers, as you can see here, that are already getting a lot of benefit out of the tool, big and small. And look, we'd love to work with you to try to help improve your customer satisfaction. If not, I hope this information has been something that's useful to you, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Gordon. That was great. Some real good insights into what the best-in-class MSPs are doing, and giving everybody a good idea of some trends to be aware of. So, just opening it up to questions and answers now. Do any of you have some questions for Gordon? If you want to just type in the chat pane your question, if you have a mic, we can pass the mic over to you. Yeah, we'll just wait for a few minutes and see if any of you have any questions. Doesn't look like we've got any coming through. Oh, here we go. We have a question from Kathy. I'm not sure if Citrix has been named as a most admired company, but I have evangelized every time I get the chance. You can't see me, but I said right when many times Gordon was speaking. I'm thinking I will add Client Heartbeat to my top 5 companies. Oh, well, thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy. Much appreciated.
All right. I suppose is there any anything else people would like to add? If maybe it's not a question, but some other comments regarding how you handle customer satisfaction and experience. Any trends that you guys see coming that we can sort of ask Gordon his thoughts on? Here we go. We've got one from Tim. Tim's asking, what's probably the one thing out of the 5 trends you've mentioned today, Gordon, that is the top priority?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Look, the top priority is definitely, well, from our research, it's culture. So culture was the thing that came up time and time again. It wasn't something, it's something that sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but when you break it down, there's actually a system behind it and a way to influence it. But that definitely came through in the best-in-class and the top 5. The people just understood how to treat customers better. And it wasn't a procedure thing. It was just, they had the right people with the right values that were, given the right information to know how to treat customers, and then peer pressure kind of takes over. If you've got a company that are all fanatical about customer service, you look at those companies like, Rackspace and stuff like that. If you get a tribe going of people that are fanatical about that stuff, not only will it force others to be like that, but it'll move those other people that aren't interested in that out of the business. So that's definitely the one area I would suggest you focus if you've just got time for one.
Okay. Alrighty, I believe that just about wraps things up. What I will let everybody know is we are going to make this webinar recording available, so there'll be an email sent through to you guys in the next 24, 48 hours. So if you did miss a bit of the early few minutes, then you can revisit some of that. And also if you want to share it around the office or to some colleagues, then you'll be able to do so. Again, if you want to learn more about Client Heartbeat, just check out our website, clientheartbeat.com. we do really focus on educating our customers and our audience on the customer experience and satisfaction. So you can also subscribe to some of our blogs and whatnot. But yeah, thanks again, Gordon. Really appreciate you going through some of these top tips and top trends, and we'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks very much for attending, guys. Go USA in the soccer.
All right, bye.
See ya. Bye.